Hi, everyone. Since I think I've just been spotlighted, I believe that's my cue to start. Um, so as people are joining, which I suspect will happen over the next couple of minutes, I'm going to call our meeting to order and welcome everyone to the 2023 annual business meeting. I'm Sharon Haar, president of the ACSA and professor at Taubman College of Architecture and Urban Planning at the University of Michigan. And this year, we are back with a virtual business meeting. We've been really glad to be back in person for a number of our conferences, including the 111th annual meeting in St. Louis. But we've decided to keep our annual caucus and business meetings virtual to enable as many people as possible to participate. So with that very brief introduction of what we're here for, I'm happy to call the 111th annual business meeting to order. So the first thing I'm going to do is introduce the ACSA board members whom you're seeing here on the screen. Myself as president, Moselle, the first vice president, Kathy Hoshar, second vice president, Robert Gonzalez, past president, Antje Steinmuller, secretary treasurer, Kwesi Daniels, at-large director, Marcelo Lopez Dinardi, also at-large director, Shelby Doyle, at-large director, Gundula Proksch, at-large director, Catherine Hamill, joining us from Canada, the at-large director, Nicole Bass, our student director from the AIAS, Martha Campbell, our public director from RMI, and Mike Monty, our executive director. And this is the moment, actually just our last opportunity to publicly thank 4 of our board members whose terms are ending this year. And can we please thank the following people with a round of virtual applause, using reactions or any other mechanism you choose. Our student director, Nicole Bass, our at-large director, Gundula Proksch, our secretary treasurer, Antje Steinmuller, and our past president, Robert Gonzalez, all of whom have done incredible work with the ACSA, and we could not thank them more for the years that they've spent with us. And now we get to introduce our incoming ACSA board, our future directors. So first, thank you to everyone who voted in this year's board elections. And our incoming board members are our student director, Julia Andor from the New York Institute of Technology, our at-large director, Joshua A. Foster from East Los Angeles College, our first community college educator serving on the ACSA board. Congratulations. Our incoming secretary treasurer, Peter Robinson from Cornell University, and our second vice president, Jose Gomez at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, who will be your 2025-26 ACSA president. And the next thing I get to do here is to introduce our current, but not long for the job, Secretary Treasurer Antje Steinmuller, who will take us through the process of identifying member schools officially represented at this meeting.
Hello.
Antje.
Hi, thank you, Sharon. To make this an official meeting, we need to record who is here representing their school as faculty counselor or as proxy. On screen is a list of schools that registered to attend the event. So that we may confirm who's actually present, we ask that you please use the Zoom chat function to identify yourself and the school you are representing. And please also tell us if you are the faculty counselor or are serving as a proxy representative. Either role is acceptable to make this an official business meeting, but we ask that only one person from each institution serve as the official representative. So again, if you are a faculty counselor or representing your school in place of your faculty counselor, please identify yourself and the name of your school in the Zoom chat. To have quorum for business, we need 1/3 of full member schools represented, which is 49 out of 147 full members. We'll continue to monitor the chat to make sure every school who is present is counted in our attendance. And after the ACSA report that Sharon will lead, we will confirm whether we have a quorum. With that, I'll hand it back to Sharon.
Thank you. And I'm watching people raising their hands here. And I promise I won't speak too slowly, just for the purposes of making sure that we have a quorum. But I have more exciting business to attend to. So as president, it's my job to review the year and the state of the association. Our mission is to lead architectural education and research guided by values such as equity, responsiveness, and a commitment to creative scholarship and practice. This year, we began a 3-year strategic planning cycle that has coincided nicely with the wide return to campus that is happening at, I think, all of our schools. And although nothing is the same as it was before early 2020, I know that everyone is trying to apply lessons learned about being in person together. And I know that a whole lot of us are beginning our final reviews. And I personally could not say more how happy I am to be doing that in person. So last month we held our member caucuses, and I want to thank the approximately 70 faculty members who participated in our breakout groups to discuss the 4 topics that you're seeing on the screen. I'm not going to read them out to you. I know you can do that yourselves. In some years, we've held caucuses in conjunction with the annual business meeting. And last year, we held the business meeting before holding the virtual member caucuses. So you can see this is a bit of a work in progress. Now, this year, we are doing the opposite. We held the caucuses, as noted, before the spring ACSA board meeting, so we could reflect on what we learned. And so this information could help us prepare for our report to the membership through this annual business meeting that's taking place right now. So on the next 2 slides, thank you, Mike, for posting them. We're summarizing some of the things we've heard from members in the caucuses. So climate action and social justice, not surprisingly, are essential areas for education and architecture and are driving growth in new faculty positions and in the many curricular and co-curricular activities that shape this culture of our schools. Student pathways into higher education also receive strong responses from members. We know that from our work with members of the Architectural Alliance, which is the AIA, NOMA, AIAS, NCARB, and NAAB, that everyone is concerned about continuing to attract more students to our discipline. Focusing on higher education is not enough, and we will talk more in this presentation about how ACSA is responding. So continuing with the discussion topics, ACSA heard suggestions about increasing the value of our conferences, and we heard a desire for more communication and advocacy by the ACSA. All of these topics came up during our April 2nd and 3rd Board of Directors meeting, and we believe that they reflect work that we are already doing this year under our current strategic plan. And I know that they'll continue into next year, as you'll hear soon from Moselle, our current vice president. So importantly, racial equity remains a primary focus within the ACSA. Throughout my report, you'll hear about how ACSA is following through on its commitments to increasing racial equity in the discipline. And for those of you who were present at the annual meeting, you saw that, I think, throughout many of the events over the course of the week. Areas of focus regarding racial and social equity include working on fundamental rather than incremental change, understanding that racial inequity looks the same across systems, whether they be architecture, health, education, or housing, and is grounded in the history of these systems. It's important that we support scholarship on equity and justice in the built environment and in architectural education, that we widen the access to architectural education for students and for upcoming faculty, and that we identify and disseminate strategies for schools to create equitable and just learning environments through program structures, policies, and practices. I promise not to read this entire slide, but what's there is an excerpt from my January message to the membership about our racial equity commitments. And one area of particular concern is highlighted here on the slide. This is the increase in efforts across the United States to limit the scope of educational inquiry. These are efforts that, using language from Florida House Bill 999, and this is a quote, ban state colleges and universities from using funds to promote, support, or maintain any programs or campus activities that espouse diversity, equity, or inclusion, or critical race theory rhetoric. And that's a close quote. And I want to be really clear that ACSA opposes any such effort to limit the scope of education around equity and justice. There are essential topics that must be covered in the education of future architects and designers. And we're in the process of connecting with our peer built environment education organizations to learn what efforts might be underway in fields such as urban planning, landscape architecture, and interior design, to name a few. And we hope that, that there will be work coming out of this collective group in the near future. So ACSA is seeking input from members on ways to support architecture schools in states where existing or proposed legislation will prevent or hinder the teaching of essential content on the intersection of race, gender, sexuality, and other topics within the built environment. And we're asking that you contact Executive Director Michael Monti by email with your input or update on us on what's happening at your school. And it's amazing to have to say this, but because educators at public institutions may not want to use their work emails for this purpose, you may also, if you choose, request to communicate via text message or telephone by emailing Mike Monti for his cell phone number. I'm going to take a deep breath after that because it's just upsetting to have to even be addressing it, but it's of critical importance. I'm going to switch tone and themes a little bit right now and take you through our many program accomplishments for this year. But first, I want to acknowledge our board of directors for their ability to develop a strong vision for the ACSA through our strategic planning process. I've said before that our board consistently manifests a commitment and discipline to strengthening ACSA's impact on architectural education. Their commitment creates the conditions under which ACSA engages more than 700 volunteers each year to do the work of advancing our strategic plan. Multiple opportunities to volunteer and serve ACSA are available, from NAAB visiting teams to editorial boards and future program committees. And it's really important to stress right now that there's 1 week remaining to submit an application for next year's committee appointments, and that we're also reopening our call for members of the NAAB visiting team roster. Although these are often referred to as nominations, they're really applications. If you are interested in volunteering with the ACSA, we would love to have you visit the ACSA website and search for volunteer opportunities and raise your hand early and often, says a former Chicagoan. I'm going to talk a little bit about the work of some of these committees. There are 3 program committees that are essential to the work of the content work of the ACSA. So ACSA's Education Committee continues our multi-year commitment to improve the ability of community college students to transfer into 4- and 5-year programs. And the committee members are shown on screen. Mark Pearson is serving his 2nd year as co-chair for the committee, and he's been joined by Shaheen Rudbari, and also this committee also is joined by Danielle Dent from the ACSA. Together with Danielle, ACSA's Director of Membership, Marketing, and Publications, the committee has spent the year working on our upcoming convening to advance community college transfer and articulation in architectural education. Developed in partnership with the Coalition of Community College Architecture Programs, the event will bring together approximately 30 representatives of community colleges and 30 representatives of university-based architecture programs to strengthen transfer policies. The committee seeks actionable goals to improve community college transfer policies for students seeking an architecture degree. And our early June event will be held in Philadelphia at the Thomas Jefferson University. We're grateful to Dean Barbara Klinkhammer and John Dwyer, Director of the Bachelor of Architecture program, for their support in hosting this event. Next, ACSA's Leadership Committee was charged with investigating new faculty positions aimed toward diversifying faculty and expanding teaching and scholarship on issues of social and environmental justice, racial equity, and community engagement. More specifically, this year, the committee looked at new and ongoing fellowships and visiting positions with an eye toward the expectations put upon faculty in these positions and the efficacy of them to advance young contingent faculty into tenure track or other forms of permanent teaching position. Their work continues for the next 2 months, and if your program has positions that fit this profile and you've not already responded to requests from their survey or through emails or phone calls or texts, the committee would love to work with you. We'd really like to thank Chair Edson Cabalfin, Tulane University, and staff member Kendall Nicholson, as well as the other members of the committee who you can see here on the screen. They put together a stimulating session in St. Louis last month where they presented their ongoing findings. And then finally, ACSA's Research and Scholarship Committee is continuing a multi-year charge of assessing scholarly work on spatial equity. In 2022-23, the committee looked at the intersection of climate action, equity, and social justice in the built environment. And our thanks go to Joyce Huang, University of Buffalo, who worked with ACSA Senior Director of Operations and Programs, Eric Wayne Ellis, to lead the committee's survey of articles, books, projects, courses, and syllabi on this topic. They completed that work over the winter, presenting some preliminary findings at the annual meeting in St. Louis about 3 weeks ago. And they will continue their work for the rest of the academic year by drafting some proposed edits to ACSA's 2017 report, Research and Scholarship for Promotion, Tenure, and Reappointments in Schools of Architecture, which I know is a really important and useful document for many of us. I now turn to our conference programming, what many of us are in ACSA for, and where we get to come together. Conferences are a major part of our commitment to scholarly communication. Supporting and disseminating research and scholarship has been a core part of ACSA since our founding in 1912. In October, we held a third planned collaboration with the American Institute of Architects. The 2022 AIA ACSA Intersections Research Conference was titled Resilient Futures. If you need to, you can focus on this screen and come mesmerized if I'm not mesmerizing enough. The virtual event focused on how climate change and climate migration have created a web of complex challenges that our built environment and communities are facing now. The program, crafted by co-chairs Gail Nappel of Gensler and Stephen Mueller of Texas Tech University, integrated 50 peer-reviewed presentations with invitational panels and keynotes organized under 4 major themes: equitable futures, healthy futures, engaged futures, and expanded futures. And we want to thank the AIA for the continued partnership with ACSA on conferences that connect academia and practice. And as you'll hear in a moment, while this past conference was held virtually, this coming year it will be held in person. The second conference of the fall brought ACSA administrators back together in person for the first time since 2019. And I want to thank Dan Adams and the faculty at Northeastern University for hosting us in their conference center on the top of a 17-story residence hall with ample views of Boston and warm surroundings for us to discuss pathways, which was the conference theme. An opening keynote by Francis Brunet, president of Pratt Institute, challenged architectural educators to move up into academic leadership. And for the next day and a half, our crowd discussed the many challenges that architectural programs face as the profession confronts profound questioning of its values. Architecture schools are often seen as key to supplying the profession with the next generation of professionals. And with this conference, we try to reframe that economic metaphor of supply and demand by looking at the many ways in which our member schools reach beyond their classrooms. We brought in panelists representing organizations that intersect with our member schools, such as Dark Matter University, the Architecture Lobby, and U.S. Architects Declare. And on the final morning, we discussed new modes of architectural degree program delivery, as well as K-12 outreach. ACSA's 111th annual meeting is still fresh in our minds, having taken place 3 weeks ago in St. Louis. And again, returning to our in-person format, this is the first full conference to take place using a new organizational structure that we had intended to implement back in 2020 when the pandemic struck. In fact, we had planned to have this conference in St. Louis in 2021, and we are pleased that we were able to follow through on the generous offer from Heather Woofter and the faculty at WashU to help us craft a compelling theme in Commons, and to host on Saturday afternoon on their beautiful campus, where Francis Curé received the Tau Sigma Delta Gold Medal and gave an inspiring keynote address. The event was also punctuated by the stirring opening plenary address by Dr. Sharon Negrete Sutton, the winner of the 2022 AIA ACSA Topaz Medallion for Excellence in Architectural Education. And Sharon's words drew from the fundamental values that lie at the heart of education and challenged us to continue to use education and as the means to help those who are most vulnerable in our populations. I want to acknowledge the work of our volunteer annual meeting committee, which was responsible for both the peer-reviewed portion of the conference, as well as the many themed panel sessions, tours, and workshops that reflect our desire to give attendees a range of inspiring sessions, in addition to opportunities to present your ongoing scholarship. And finally, I also want to mention the wonderful emerging faculty fundraising event that we held at the St. Louis Arch on Friday evening. Even if it was a little shaky up there at the top in an incoming storm. The sold-out event celebrated the dozens of ACSA Architectural Education Award winners that presented their work during the conference and gave everyone an opportunity to celebrate the supportive community that is ACSA. The last conference that has yet to take place, but is one that I personally have been looking forward to since I joined the board 3 years ago. Every 2 years, ACSA partners with the European Association for Architectural Education to hold the Teachers Conference, taking turns for hosting each time. So as I hope you know, in June, the Teachers Conference will be taking place in Iceland over the summer solstice. We received a very strong response to the call for abstracts under the theme Educating the Cosmopolitan Architect. And now we look forward to getting together in Reykjavik, hosted by the Iceland University of the Arts. And I've been told, please note, it's not too late to register to attend if you still have room in your already, I'm sure, busy summer schedule. Of course, no ACSA conversation would be complete without talking about prizes. This year, ACSA has added 2 prizes. First, thanks to the partnership with Columbia University's Temple Hoyne-Buell Center for the Study of American Architecture, we've awarded $200,000 in funding over the last 4 years to a range of architecture programs as part of the Course Development Prize in Architecture, Climate Change, and Society. The purpose of the program is to expand the range of approaches for addressing climate change and professional practice by providing funding for the development of novel pedagogies and other work. And we announced the 2022 winners in January, which are shown on the screen. In the future, we look forward to developing a cohort of faculty developing innovative pedagogies to address climate change. Last year, we added the Timber Prize in partnership with the Softwood Lumber Board. Like the Course Development Prize, the Timber Prize awards $50,000 a year to schools with innovative courses and curricula that create a stimulating and evidence-based environment for learning about timber. We'll soon be announcing the winners of the 2022-2023 Timber Education Prize, so stay tuned for that. And continuing with the theme of timber, new this year, ACSA has partnered with the Softwood Lumber Board to create a timber education resource library. The library will include video content to be used in evidence-based course environments for learning about mass timber's performance, construction, and sustainable industry. The library is being led by an editorial board, which will commission and review videos for publication, much in the way the ACSA is developing the Professional Practice Education Library in partnership with the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. I know my own students will be looking forward to this resource because this semester we seem to be all about timber. And finally, I probably don't need to remind you that each year ACSA offers a student design competitions that both reward students' outstanding work and recognize the faculty that support their development. The American Institute of Steel Construction has been a sponsor of the steel competition for more than 20 years. I'm going to thank them for that. We are sincerely grateful for their continued support of architectural education and are thankful for the continued engagement of faculty in this annual competition. And we also want to recognize the AIA Committee on the Environment, what many of us know as COAT, for creating the student education of their own renowned COAT Top 10. Each year, hundreds of students register for this competition and expand their understanding of what architects can do to address climate change. And this year, we're also fortunate to have a new partnership with the National Concrete Masonry Association, which is supporting our Community Commons student design competition. And we're grateful for our sponsor support and for the work of the ACSA programs team, which include Eric Wayne Ellis and Edwin Hernandez for their staffing of our sponsored programs. And on that happy ending note, I would like now to introduce Moselle, Interim Dean of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee School of Architecture and Urban Planning and ACSA's President-elect. Welcome, Mo, to talk about next year's activities.
Thank you, Sharon. Nicely done. I have the opportunity to share lots of things going on in the future of ACSA. When the board renewed our 3-year strategic plan last year, the 3 people who were going to serve as presidents during this time, Sharon, myself, and Kathy Hoshar, agreed that continuing continuity across years would be very important if ACSA were going to have a meaningful impact on architectural education. We held a number of meetings to discuss the dozens of strategies the board and the planning committee had been generating. And from this work, we sketched out priorities that would build upon one another. As Sharon mentioned, program committees are designed to be important mechanisms by which to implement the strategic plan. As you can see on this slide, the charges for next year's program committees largely build on the ongoing work, with one committee initiating a new charge. The Research and Scholarship Committee will continue to work on advancing scholarship around climate action, but next year, under the leadership of Committee Chair Jose Ibarra, University of Colorado, Denver, the committee will focus on developing our members' capacity to disseminate the products of teaching and scholarship to audiences outside of academia, including policies and policymakers and the public. The Education Committee will continue to implement the outcomes of the June convening of the community college and university programs. I'm happy Mark Pearson will stay on for 1 more year as co-chair and will be joined by Jory Erdman from James Madison University. It is our hope that the work of the 60 or so people from the convening will then be shared and developed by an even broader audience of schools, which can benefit from continued infusion of students from 2-year programs. Last, the Leadership Committee will embark on a new charge with Edson Cabelfin of Tulane University staying on as chair. The committee will turn its attention to pathways into architectural education, looking at ways that ACSA member programs engage with primary and secondary education. A myriad of architecture and design-oriented K-12 programs exist, and we think giving ACSA members an understanding of this landscape will strengthen and connect existing ones and spark new ones. Also on that front, we will be looking to engage national programs that expose programs to architecture in ways that are not entirely connected to architectural education, including organizations such as Project Lead the Way and NAF, which provide K-12 systems with STEM-oriented educational content that addresses architecture in the built environment. We also have 3 conferences on the books and are forging a relationship with a new partner, hopefully for a 4th. The call for submissions for the 2023 AIA ACSA Intersections Research Conference was recently announced. We're pleased to be working with AIA once again on our annual fall conference. We're also back in person for the first time since 2019. I'd like to thank Steve Schreiber of UMass Amherst for agreeing to host us, and Professor Karen Brous of UMass, who agreed to be ACSA's co-chair. She'll be joined by Chris Flinchato of ZGF Architects in Portland. The conference will focus on the human and environmental impacts that architects have in specifying materials. The call was written to collect a range of approaches to materials from both educators and practitioners. We invite abstracts documenting ongoing research to develop and apply sustainable materials, as well as reports from the classroom and case studies from firms. Local tours are in the works, and we will convene on UMass's campus, where you can experience their new CLT building and their historic building designed by Marcel Breuer. Abstracts are due June 7th, and the conference happens October 19th through the 21st. Just 2 weeks later, ACSA will host the 2023 Administrators Conference on the campus of the University of Buffalo before the snow comes. We have the benefit of good timing here, as the School of Architecture and Planning is completing a major renovation of its architecture building, giving us the opportunity to hold the conference in a new space before the building is officially put in service for students. One focus of the conference will be on external partners, public impact, and those who operate in delivering architectural education outside of our membership. Dates for that conference are November 2nd through 4th, which you can see on the screen, and we're going to be in Buffalo. Bring your jacket. The 112th annual meeting is still 11 months away, but if there is one thing I want to take away from this part of the presentation, it's that the deadline to submit abstracts and proposals for sessions is June 14th, just 7 days after the deadline for the fall conference. ACSA returns to Canada for the first time since 2015 and to Vancouver for the first time since 1985. The conference theme is Disruptors on the Edge, reflecting both the geographic location of Vancouver on the western edge of North America with strong connections across the Pacific. It also reflects the interests of our steering committee members, Blair Satterfield from the University of British Columbia and Jermaine Barnes from the University of Miami. Both participated in the 2019 ACSA Fall Conference at Stanford University titled Less Talk, More Action, and said they wanted to capture the restless energy of that conference to push the boundaries of architecture. So I invite you to submit an abstract to one of our 10 tracks or look at our call for special session, which this year has a new type of conference event, the Action Session. Action sessions will be alternate formats for exchange beyond the panel session, tour, or workshop. As the call says, we particularly invite proposals that challenge the status quo across architectural education and practice, and that use the opportunity for in-person experiences to spark action, forge collaboration across schools, and enable people in the discipline to engage audiences beyond the academy. Finally, ACSA is in talks with a partner for an international conference in a location that we have never been to, but with whom we share a lot in common. More to come on that. Now I would like to introduce Antje Steinmuller, who will present the Secretary Treasurer's report. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mo. So the ACSA Board of Directors reviews the organization's financial statements at each of our 3 meetings. The board's finance committee also receives more detailed financial information on the organization's budget, investments, and financial management. Each year, the organization has an audit by an independent certified public accountant. For the fiscal year ending in August 31st, 2022, the organization received a clean audit with no concerns about the management of ACSA finances. I would now like to report to you on the state of ACSA's finances. In this slide, you see ACSA statements of financial position, or the balance sheet, with comparative numbers for last year. In the 2021 to 22 year, ACSA's net assets dropped by $146,855. I will say more about the details of this on the next slide. Our assets and liabilities also show significant changes over the previous year. Total assets dropped nearly $600,000, but liabilities also dropped approximately $500,000. During the year, the organization received word that our second PPP loan of $169,285 was forgiven, which reduced our liabilities. The organization also did not record as much deferred revenue as it did in previous years. Because we use the accrual method of accounting, money that we collect in advance of its use in the next fiscal year is recorded as a liability until it is later recognized and used. On the asset side, the organization transferred more funds into investments, while at the same time, the value of those investments dropped as the financial markets went through several months of losses. Despite these changes, we are confident that the organization's balance sheet is still in a strong position with nearly 2.6 million of unrestricted net assets. Now we turn to the fiscal year 21 to 22 summary of revenue and expenses. As I mentioned before, the organization recorded a total net deficit of $148,855. However, the bulk of that deficit is due to the drops in the value of our investments. We recorded an operating surplus of over $100,000 thanks to the strong revenue from publications and from sponsored educational activities such as competitions and prizes. Dues remain our largest source of revenue at 58%. We use these dues to support member programs that do not have separate revenue streams, such as our annual awards, studyarchitecture.com, and our data and research program. Each year, a portion of the member dues contributed by U.S. full and candidate members is passed through to support the National Architectural Accrediting Board, or NAB. We contributed $420,682 to NAB's accrediting operations, an amount that is matched by both AIA and NCARB. AIAS also contributes funding to NAB appropriate to their organization size. The net deficit for 2021 to 22 marks a significant change over the $600,000 net surplus that ACSA was fortunate to have in the prior year. The board, through the Finance Committee, looks at multi-year trends to ensure that ACSA's financial resources are protected when economic conditions worsen. In other words, we look at the performance of our operations to ensure they don't lose money, and we seek to manage our investments with an eye to reasonable long-term growth, since we cannot control the financial markets and their behavior over time. On the matter of investments, I want to return to a topic I covered in last year's Treasurer's Report, socially responsible investments. At the end of the 2021-22 year, the board charged the Finance Committee with finalizing a plan to move the organization's investment portfolio towards socially responsible investments. This is another reflection of our commitment to putting our money where our values are and aligning finances with the strategic plan at the same time. The board also emphasized the need to tie financial planning, to strategic planning. With our 2022 to 2025 strategic plan, the board agreed on a plan to draw from reserves to fund one-time expenses that we think will have a significant impact, such as the community college convening that we just heard about, which ACSA is funding on its own. Evolving our investment strategy is tied directly to this desire, and I'm happy to report that we are well underway at this point in transitioning our investments. We engaged a consultant who worked with us to revise our investment policy statement, and we now have an investment portfolio divided into short, intermediate, and long-term categories with proportions tied to ACSA funding priorities. We also added to our investment policy a commitment to prioritize investments consistent with the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. ACSA embraces these goals and, to the extent practical, will incorporate environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, investments in our intermediate and long-term funds. We meet quarterly with our investment advisors to review progress and performance, as the transition of our portfolio will happen over an extended period. This is my last report as treasurer for the organization, and I very much look forward to working with Peter Robinson to ensure he is ready to take over in July. Thank you so much for your attention, and I will now put on my secretary's hat and look to the staff to tell me if we have enough schools present to constitute a quorum for official business. Sorry, and I see, let's see, sorry, no quorum. But we can still do new business. And if people want to raise any topics, please let us know and direct things to the chat. So I'll hand it back to Sharon.
I'm back. But because I wasn't on the screen before, I didn't get to thank you appropriately for your service.
Thank you, Sharon. Likewise.
For our other business, we have updates from the executive editors of our two journals. And now I'd like to introduce Nora Wendell for the JAE report.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and thank you, Ansha. I'm going to make sure I can advance. Okay, I'm going to move quickly. I've got 5 minutes, and it's been a really busy year. I'm happy to be here to represent the JAE and the phenomenal group of people that I work with, including the ACSA. So the first thing you're seeing is the new identity for the JAE. We've been working closely with Kudos Design Collaboratory over the past year. ACSA has been very involved in helping us organize this new identity, and we're really thrilled to be presenting it here. You'll see it unrolling on issues and mailboxes in the fall, and you'll also see it on our new website, which I'll also speak to. The JAE editorial board is a group of 22 editorial board members. I'm presenting them here so that you can see the full complement of everybody who's on the editorial board. As you can see from the colors, people are identifying their contributions as associate editors, meaning they're in charge of committees related to the journal's work, or they are actively theme editors or have been, or they're JAE Fellows Advocates. So I wanted to look at this slide and share with you the fact that not only are we an editorial board working through the peer review process, which is, of course, the primary charge of our journal, but also we're very involved at many levels in the number of the programs and initiatives coming out of the journal. We just closed our call for editorial board members. We had 42 applications for 6 positions. So we'll be looking through those for the next few weeks and making decisions about the 6 people that we invite onto the editorial board. This is our second annual call for members, and it's been a process that has been really embraced by the editorial board, and I think by members of the ACSA, because we've seen the numbers of applications grow quite a bit by this year. So we'll be excited to announce them in the next few months. And of course, as you know, the journal issue on reparations, which is journal issue 77-1, hit mailboxes in March. This was theme edited by Mitch McEwen, Cruz Garcia, and Natalie Frankowski. We were really thrilled with this issue. It was the first issue that we did where we actually organized the content by subject rather than by category. So when you get that issue, you'll find design, essay, narratives are all organized together around different ideas. I also wanted to mention that the introduction to this issue is open access, which is something that Taylor and Francis offered to us. This will be available for the next 30 to 60 days, I believe. So if you have colleagues outside of the ACSA who don't necessarily have access to the JAE, and they're interested in reparations, please let them know or forward this introduction to them. They should be able to read it. If you are interested in joining a Instagram Live with the theme editors, that will be happening tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Central. We're finding it's an interesting way to engage audiences in discussion. So they'll be live, and you can also, if you join Instagram, you can send in questions you have about the issue. They'll be available for about 20 to 30 minutes. They're short bursts of conversation about topics related to the issue. At the spring meeting we just organized the content for Deserts, which is theme edited by Ursula Crippa, Francesco Marullo, and Stephen Mueller. We were really happy with the international aspect of this issue. So though the topic is on deserts, that actually became something that was sort of globally engaged. So we're really excited for that issue to be available in the fall. The issue following that, which will be available in the spring of 2024, so in 1 year, is the issue Infidelities, which is theme edited by Aya Musmar, Nishat Awan, Mena Aga, and Ozer Saluji. This is an issue that we're excited about because it's a bit more expansive. It begins with the question of what it means to be loyal to a discipline, to its institutions, to a practice, and to yourself. The ways in which that question intersects with research, with pedagogy, with media, and with the production of architectural research and inquiry is something that the theme editors are really interested in. So I would encourage you to let your colleagues and friends know that this is available. It's going to be, I think, an interdisciplinary approach to the question. So we're excited to see who will submit their ideas. Following that, and still in the process of being prepared for the online post, is an issue called 78.2, Worlding Energy Transitions, which is theme edited by Rania Gozin from MIT and Billy Fleming at the University of Pennsylvania. To quote from their call, by worlding, we mean the use of media and methods like fiction, game design, and storytelling. And of course, by energy transitions, they mean the shift or diversification from fossil fuel sources to other forms of technology. This will come out, I think, 6 months after the TAD issue on climate. So we're kind of curious about the potential intersections that may occur there between the two journals. And I'm looking forward to talking with Elise more about that in the future. We're really delighted that the JE Fellows will be presenting their work on the new JE website in the fall. So this will be Curry Hackett, Bees Zhang, Ella Dan Elzen, and Deli Adiemo. They're all completing their projects. Those will be public in the fall on the JE website. We'll also be planning a session with them online. So if you want to join the webinar, that information will be coming up soon. And I wanted to just take a moment to say that not only were we really delighted with how the program is unfolding, but also that one of the goals of it, which was to have the JE Fellows, each of them have more of a platform for their research, even beyond the JE, but sort of rippling out into other places. We were thrilled that a number of fellows gave public presentations on their work, were invited by member schools to talk about what they were doing. We had one fellow publish his research during his fellowship, a piece called Fugitive Practice by Curry Hackett in the current issue of JE. He wrote that in collaboration with Jerome Hayford. They created an exhibition at Iowa State. So I just wanted to thank all of the ACSA member schools that have been so engaged in this program and so generous with fellows, providing them platforms and inviting them to speak about their work. It's been really exciting and energizing to see that happen. We gave 3 awards this year from the JE. These were for articles that were published over the last year. So we had a design essay award given Deborah Richards and Angela Person on a piece called Equity and Dignity by Design, Co-Creating Guidelines with Planned Parenthood. A piece by Tanya Gutierrez Monroy won the JE Narrative Award called Reframing Stories, A Woman and Her Building at the Dawn of the Mexican Revolution. And the last piece, which won the JE Essay Award, was Janet McGaugh, Alistair Vance, and Uncle Herb Patton, who wrote a piece called A Holding Place, an Indigenous Typology to Mediate Hospital Care. We're working with Taylor and Francis to make a awards section of the Taylor and Francis, online JE website. So it's not our actual website, but the Taylor and Francis, where they host the articles. They're interested in making these awards open access, which we were glad to do because they are award-winning articles. We felt that they should be sort of liberated from behind the paywall and made more accessible. So we're working with our Taylor and Francis representative on that currently. I wanted to show a few images of our website, which will be unfolding and online in the fall, or actually, no, in a few months. Sorry, I misspoke. It should be available in the next few months. I'm delighted to say that you don't have to scroll to the right to read things. This is exciting to us. You can just scroll down. You can also read it on your phone. So we're joining the newer technology. It's a beautiful website, also designed by Kudos, and should make things like calls for papers easier to find, editorial guides easier to find, author guidelines easier to find. So it's been a wonderful process. We're thrilled to see how it's turned out, and it will be available, as I said, in the next month or so. We're looking at it going live. So thank you to ACSA for making this possible. And I know I'm running out of time. So briefly, I will touch on a few things that we learned at our spring meeting from our Taylor and Francis representative, Melanie Bartlett. We learned that in 2021, we had a record number of downloads. And though in 2022, we didn't have the same number, we're still up quite a bit from 2020. So we were excited about the fact that people are engaging with JAE online and downloading. We think there may be a correlation with the increase in percentage of open access articles. We've learned that, this does make a difference. So we talked about that, and Melanie thought that that was definitely a possibility. We have found that our downloads are primarily coming from North America and Europe, but we were excited to see that there are, definitely audiences beyond in Asia, Australia, Central and South America. So we're continuing to monitor that and hope that those audiences also increase. And one thing I wanted to touch on is that although definitely having open access articles makes a difference in people downloading, because of course, open access means you don't have to, deal with a paywall. You're not paying for an article if you don't already have a membership and access. What we discovered was that it was about 50-50. So we learned that of our most downloaded articles in the past 12 months, half of them were open access. You can see that last column identifies if it was or not. And half were not open access. So we're going to be exploring that a little bit with Taylor and Francis to understand what's happening. Why are certain articles downloaded even if they are not open access? What we are starting to look at is the potential that if something, so for instance, this article, Verdant Persuasions, which is right here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's the fourth one from the bottom. That was not an open access article, but when we looked at our alt metrics with Taylor and Francis, we discovered that it had an attention score of 82, meaning that it was downloaded repeatedly by a number of different audiences. We believe this is because the article actually was picked up by a major news outlet and the conversation was sort of distributed that way. So we think that that may have had something to do with the broad engagement with that article. And in a related, we're hoping this is potentially related. We learned that since March 5th, 2023, we've actually doubled our site score metrics from 2021. So we're interested in what is causing the sort of doubling of site score tracking. We're not sure exactly what's contributing to that, but knowing that we are having increasing downloads is definitely a significant sign to us that things are moving in a good direction. So thank you for your time and energy and attention to this, and I'll just pass it on to Elise. Thank you.
Thanks, Nora. And I definitely hope we can combine and coordinate on some things with climate and circularity, which is coming up too. I'm going to wait. Great. Let's see if I can do this. I think I've got control now. All right. So thank you. I'll try and keep this brief as well. I want to introduce, of course, these are 15 members of our board. We have gone up from 12 members in the last year, now 15. We're going to stay stable at 15. It's quite nice this way. Every board member does at least 2 roles at any given time during their service. So over their 3-year service, they will either be an associate editor, an issue editor, or involved in now our new role, which is communications editor, which is Theodora Varduli, number 5 here. For some reason, the names aren't showing up, but I had them. But Theodora is our current communications editor. So it's a very active board. We meet bi-monthly. Oh, there we go. We meet bi-monthly in order to coordinate for what are essentially 3 issues that are ongoing at any given time. And then we also meet separately as an editorial team, depending on and each editorial team depends on the composition of board members that are active on that particular issue. So emeritus, I just want to give a shout out to those who are stepping off. We have another 3 board members stepping off this summer. We will be conducting a search this summer in order to replace those board members. We do have new issues that are coming up, tectonics, which will be out soon, and I'll give you a good sense, give you a sense of what that includes. That includes anything from, we looked at tectonics, past, present, future, but we also looked at tectonics in terms of social equity. We have a nice piece by Jermaine Barnes on that. Michael Hensel is looking at it in the future sense. It's a nice hybrid between actually landscape and architecture. And then we have Ed Ford doing a piece on the past. We thought that that was a great combination of voices to hear. We have a number of one sort of change in this particular issue is opposed to our typical 5 details plus or 1 details plus piece. We actually have 5 details plus pieces that will be included in this issue. So we are being a little bit more responsive in a certain way. We're trying to use those voices and share pieces that we feel are appropriate for each subtopic or focus area. It will have 7 new peer review pieces. They're quite exciting as well. And they do not always deal now that we are open and have an ongoing submission. Those pieces do not always address the specifics of the sub-theme, which is what we're calling the themes now. We have 2 upcoming issues, circularity and climate. This will be the first time in many ways that circularity has been addressed in a journal focused in architecture. So we're quite excited about that. So we have a couple pieces that introduce that idea from well-known practitioners and academics. And then we have, we just got the PR for this. We had a nice selection of PR pieces also addressing issues in circularity. The next issue coming out will be climate. We are currently working on that and looking at the call for papers went out. We're working on looking at invited authors, and then we have the peer review, which will be coming in for June for that. So give you a sense of those times. Those issues, this is engineering, just to give you another sense of this is how the teams are coordinated. I just wanted to show you how, in fact, these change per issue. And so each editorial team is made up each time of a different set of people, and everyone on the board circulates through and is able to serve in a role. Roles that bridge issues are the communication editor, which is new, our associate editor for information and graphics, and our executive editor or associate editors. So table of contents, we are actually now realizing that we don't always need to have methodologies. So it's something that we are looking at either contracting or sometimes not including. So it's one piece of the journal that's in flux. Details Plus enables us to engage with some of our practitioners more directly. I think you'll be very excited to see the Details Plus pieces in the upcoming issue of Tectonics. They're all practitioners. It's all quite, well, that's not true. We have a couple of 2 one that is not, but quite exciting work to see. For any issue, our peer review is 70 to 75% of the issue. The solicited pieces are divided into a number of areas, and those topics or areas which suggests a number of pieces, but in terms of page count, these are actually quite a bit smaller. The word count on these is quite a bit less. The average word count for these is about 1,000 words per piece, whereas for our peer review pieces, that could be anything from 6 to 10,000 words per piece. So peer review still takes up as it has all along the majority of our journal. Intelligence received a number of submissions over time, and 75. We're averaging now between 55 and 65 submissions. 2 or 3 years ago of peer review pieces, that was 30 to 40. So we've almost doubled that in the last 2 to 3 years. All right. Some citation metrics. We are at 1.1 site score, basically, which means that we actually we now are registered as an impact factor. So we're in the top 25% of journals for this topic area. now. So that's something that we are quite pleased with and are building each year. These, you can see the site score still reflects what was true in 2021. We're hoping that that number has gone up, in fact, in 2022. Sorry, here's the 2021. Our acceptance rate has actually gone up just slightly this year. And then the average days for acceptance has expanded. That's due in part to the fact that we now organize this using the pipeline method, meaning that it's a rolling submission time period. And you may submit an article and it may actually sit for a little bit, which we let you know, because it's not, we don't have an immediate, we're not actually reviewing those or selecting those articles for an issue. So, but we reach out and let all of our authors know this and give them the option. So again, I just wanted to point out some of those metrics that we've been looking at in terms of this. The site score, we're quite pleased with, and we're hoping to increase that again by at least a couple of, 0.3 to 0.4. What that means is that the articles that are being downloaded are being cited, which is actually the critical component when you're looking at the metrics for understanding the impact that any journal is having. So over the last 3 years, these are the number of downloads and the types of articles that are being downloaded, and then the most cited articles of all time. And you can see the number of views for those. So a lot of interest in prototyping, a lot of interest in, all the impacts in terms of building systems. We're definitely seeing, we saw a number of interesting things that came in due to with climate and circularity in terms of issues that are coming forward with material use and new technologies. One of those is things like 5D BIM. Basically, BIM is now actually turning into quite the inclusive program. One is able to write contracts from within BIM. This is going to be quite a game changer within our profession. Something about the alt metrics, just to give you a sense, our alt metrics, we're always working on improving those. We've recently, with the communications editor, these are from last year. We haven't updated these with the new ones because we're waiting to see what the impact of adding Instagram is going to be to us. So JAE has already started with the Reels. We'll be doing similar. We've been working with Heather, as I think they have, to develop new strategies for reaching out and trying to increase the impact. We'll also be doing similar things as we move forward. So we keep track of this just to show you that we're also trying to make sure that our alt metrics are tracked. Engineering, which is now out, I hope you got a copy. One of those articles, the space architecture and microgravity, that author opted to make that open access and has paid for that. So that's available. It's getting quite a number of downloads. It's an interesting piece in and of itself. You're also just seeing the kinds of things we're doing in terms of outreach. In the last year, we've transitioned to asking all of our authors to include their hashtags and to participate in promoting their articles. And we're seeing that slowly happen. So workshops, public talks, we gave a workshop special session at the last conference in which we engaged authors who had previously published with us to explain and discuss the process with other authors who are potentially interested. That was actually a very successful discussion. So planning for 2023, I can show you what we did for last year as well, what we implemented for 2022-23. These are based on what we had looked at in 2021-22. So the journal context, we have always to increase our peer review, continue to develop the pipeline, our outreach and promotion, increase our alt metrics. Our focus is also, however, on increasing that site score as we move forward. Develop videos and reels. We've been working on those. We'll release those when we release the promotion for tectonics. Work to educate authors about the importance of promoting. Designed and produced TAD pins. We did do that. ACSA conference special sessions. We completed that. And developed and voted on new terms for our advisory board. We have just completed that, which will be submitting to the ACSA board for review very soon. We're also cleaning up some archive and storage and getting some email templates and letters revised. In the planning stage, developing collections with Taylor and Francis, again, increasing our peer review. One of the exciting things we're also looking is addressing ChatGPT and its impact in terms of publishing. So both for images and text. We're going to take a stance. We're going to explore what the possibilities would be in terms of how this is used, both in terms of promoting the journal. There's some very exciting things that are happening. For instance, converting text to audio. I think we'll be looking at that and potentially adding it to our website. But we're also going to be exploring what this means in terms of image creation and text creation for our authors. I believe it's time, and it's going to be necessary to take a stand very, very soon. Many journals, including Nature and a number of the major journals in the sciences and engineering and in our disciplines, are seeing around the world are seeing author submissions now using ChatGPT. So we're going to need very soon to figure out how to identify articles that have been created using that, and we're going to have a policy for that. So we're going to be working with Taylor and Francis on that as this develops. We'll be looking for 3 new members. Outreach and promotions. We want to start measuring the outcomes of promotional efforts. So we need to start for instance, when we introduce Instagram, we're interested to see if that has an uptick in the next 6 months in terms of downloads or awareness of the journal articles through downloads. We're going to activate our Instagram account. We're going to add images of the EB to the website so that we're identifiable. And then we're looking at adding videos. I said potentially using some AI version in order to convert text to audio to make that possible. We have the 15 new members. We will maintain those 15. We won't have 15 brand new members. I should have changed that. We'll have actually 3 new members this year, but 15 members for the board. And then, as always, I just want to be sure and thank Danielle Dent, Julia McKenzie, Heather Alberizi, Michelle Sturgis, and Eric Ellis, without whom this would not be possible. Their help in the entire process of navigating the production, particularly, but even managing all of our content for our ongoing 3 issues at any given time is really critical, and we couldn't do it without them. And then once again, here is that list of names of our editors, and then finally our editorial board, and then finally just a thank you to the ACSA leadership for their ongoing support for the journal and making everything that we do possible. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Elise and Nora. I have been in text communication with Mike, and I do hear that we have no new business that's come to our attention. I am aware that we're a few moments or 10 minutes or so over our on the hour end time, but I do want to check in just to be sure there aren't any pressing questions that need to be asked in this meeting. And if not, just to note that we welcome emails of questions all the time, any input. The ACSA board and its staff is always here to hear from you and respond. Are we hearing from anyone? I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Okay. With that, I want to thank everyone who's been able to attend this evening or afternoon, depending on where you're sitting. We look forward to seeing people again in the fall at the exciting conferences, if not in Reykjavik in the next couple of months. And thank you again. It's been really a pleasure being the president of this organization. And with that, I'm going to sign off.